Again, my name's Joe Manausa with Joe Manausa Real Estate. I'm kind of the data nerd. I like to track what's going on in the market. Gives me an opportunity to advise clients on what we see happening now and in the coming months and coming years. I've gathered a ton of information. I've got it in a format here where I can kind of flow through it. I would prefer interruptions because I look at this stuff all the time and I kind of go on autopilot. So basically, I'm going to cover the market in two ways. I'm going to start with the U.S. market, and then I'm going to come to specifically the Tallahassee market. I've been doing this for the builders, I think, since 2007, and I can tell you that the tools and the data and the information that's available gets better every year, and it really allows for a tight review of what we should expect in housing. Big changes are occurring in the U.S. I know people on my side of the house, the brokerage industry, we've had total chaos with the lawsuit at the NAR level. They just settled conveniently for $400 million. And it's going to change some of how we practice on the ground. So there's chaos in the sales side. We're all going to be feeling consumerism. You know, it just is going to keep driving change in all of our industries. I usually start off with, before I get into the numbers, how confident am I in what I'm going to share with you today? And last year I showed a hurricane map that it was tracking like 70 hurricanes and all the spaghetti. That's how confident I was last year. This year I'm a lot more confident, and I've got some really dark things that I'm going to be sharing. And I'm usually pretty upbeat, so you might be getting an upbeat view of some dark things. Number one, let's start with a picture of where the U.S. is heading. This is how the United States is going to live if we do not enact changes at the local level everywhere. Okay, this is not a federal government thing to fix, although the federal government is very good at being part of the break. Okay, we've got NIMBYism that's controlling our communities from coast to coast. Everybody has rights to my property except for me. If I want to build on a property that's been zoned, platted, and all, it just doesn't matter. You guys know it better than I do. The frustration is everybody thinks that by chirping when you want to develop something, they think they're helping preserve Tallahassee, and all they're doing is running our prices higher. The neat thing is we're no different than everywhere else. Everywhere else is as bad as we are. Okay, so we now have a national phenomena of where we're going to start seeing multifamily take over the market. Okay, I think we hit a high of about 67% home ownership rate a couple of years ago. I see it dropping below 50 over the next 20 years. Okay, and that's where it was prior to World War II. Home ownership rate means how many people own the house they live in. Okay, so there will always theoretically be single family home rentals and multifamily rentals and all that, but the percentage of the country that owns the house they live in. One of the things I will probably stumble into several times today is one of the mistakes. A lot of the information we get about housing comes from people whose job is to talk about news, but they don't understand what's happening behind the news. Okay, so they might take a singular statistic and go, woe is me, this is bad, or oh, look how great this is. But you really need to take in the whole picture to understand what's going on. And the common thread I see amongst relatively intelligent reporters, forget the others, everybody believes there's a for sale market that we need to analyze, and there's a for rent market that we need to analyze. Okay, and what I will tell you is there's only a shelter market. You need to be able to analyze the rents, you need to be able to analyze prices, you need to analyze the sales, the listings. Anywhere an American can live, it all has to go into the same pot. Because as we saw in 2008, when the market tanked, a lot of builders had their homes taken by the banks. The banks are not in the business owning homes, so they sell them in the foreclosure sale. Investors pick them up, and houses that were for sale all of a sudden are now houses that were for rent. So the for rent market and the for sale market, we go back and forth with each other to help imbalance and balance supply and demand. Okay, but something happened in 2006 without any of us really catching it. Okay, and if you read all the postscripts from the housing market crash from back then, most of it will be blaming on you, the builder. You built too many homes. But I got to tell you what, Forensics has taught us that's not what happened. We never overbuilt America, and we used the rental market to prove it. Okay, the rental market, the rents were stable all through that chaos. What happened was the government took away the bottom 22% of the borrowing market. So people that used to borrow money down to a 550 credit score now needed a 630 credit score, 640 credit score, maybe a 600 credit score, but not really at that end of the market. So we took away a major chunk of buyers and we forced them into the for rent market. And so all of a sudden there weren't enough homes for rent, but there were too many homes for sale because back then, and this might blow your mind, statistically, it cost 10% more to build a house than to buy an existing one in 2005. The average price per square foot of an existing home was literally $10 a foot, $90, below the $99 y'all could build one for. Now, sometimes I've seen it exceed 80%. We're seeing it dip down now. How does it dip down? Is it because your costs are coming down? No, it's because existing homes are exploding higher. Right now, they're about 30% apart. Historically, in the 1990s, 1980s, all the way through about 2005, they're about 10% different. So it was a lot easier to control supply and demand as a builder or as a community of builders because it wasn't like you were taking this huge risk. The homes were already trading at $90 a foot, and you knew you're bringing a brand new product to the market for $99. That's not really rocket science. Well, we've moved to a new level. But get a good look at this picture, because this is where we're heading. Now, none of the new apartments in Tallahassee look like this, but 50 years from now they will. Multifamily is what you build because you can't figure out how to build single family. When you lack leadership, when you lack imagination at the local government level, this is what you get. They called it communism. It worked very well, sort of, not really. Okay, so that ugliness is coming to us coast to coast unless people start demanding change. Why do I start with the US? Well, because there's more and better data. Tallahassee data is we're a very small community. All the data aggregators, they never quite make it to Tallahassee sizes. They only make it down to like Tampa sizes. So ours is tough. But the national triggers impact Tallahassee. For example, interest rates aren't local. When mortgage interest rates fluctuate at a national level, it impacts Tallahassee. And again, I get really good data on that. Okay, and finally, Tallahassee is a trailing economy. Back in the day, back before there was an internet, I could go travel to California, see how screwed up their real estate market was, and then come back here and for 3 years sound like a genius explaining to people how things were about to go. Because everything started on the West Coast and came this way. Well, we're still a trailing economy, but we're like 6 months behind now. The internet has made communication flow. So when you start seeing stupid things happening out west, they'll happen here too. It's a little boomerang effect. They skip right over us, hit Tampa, and then bounce back up. Supply and demand, again, there's no two market theory here. There's one market. So when we look at supply and demand, we really have to consider a lot more than just what's for sale. New construction, I'm going to cover that, rents, prices, and mortgage rate. Okay, so let's jump into the U.S. market. Back when the world was about to come to an end for many of us in 2006, 2007, there were 4 million homes on the market. Okay, 4 million. Today there's 1.07 million, and that's up. A lot of the national voices are, oh, we're about to have another housing collapse. Well, first of all, I believe we are having a housing collapse. When you take away a third of the sales out of the market, I collapse. So it's not real healthy for my business when 1 in 3 buyers goes away. But as far as prices collapsing, no, sir, no, ma'am, it's impossible. Okay, we could see prices drop, but we're going to need to see a lot of people drop too. Supply and demand is a very simple concept. And right now, and what you'll see here shortly in the next couple slides, we have been building at a historically low rate since 2008. And it's caught up to just about every market except for California, where everyone's leaving. 4 million down to 1.07 million, that's a like 73% decline. Smart money. Wall Street is buying single-family homes. Why do you think that is? Is this because they're just so stupid, they're just catching on to maybe their investment grade? Realizing that more and more people cannot afford homes, so if they'll just buy up all the homes, they can rent them out and control the rates. You get leveraged appreciation because these investment banks are borrowing money at 2.5%, and financing 95% of their purchase, it's a frickin' home run. They realize what all the local little investors have been doing for the last 100 years. Investment banks are getting into the business. If you want to know whether it's smart to buy real estate, look at what the smart money's doing. They're buying real estate. Breaking news, we need more homes. I think that's been my theme here for the last 3 years or 4 years. We're at a 60-year plus low. So this is housing units completed. And the dashed line is a 25-year average. Generally speaking, we're seeing a great decline over the last 25 years, but if you look over the last 10 years, you see a downright plummet. This is for the non-statistical nerds. What is our U.S. population doing? It's growing. It's not declining. Thank our current president, it's definitely not declining. Our population is growing, but our population is growing at the lowest percentage rate of growth in like 50 years. You got to take a step back and kind of look at the math. Percentage-wise, we're growing slower, but body count-wise, we're growing faster than ever because 50 years ago, we weren't even half our current size. We are growing much faster than we've grown in the past, body count-wise. Percentage-wise, slower, okay? Do we build houses for percentages or do we build houses for bodies? Yeah, 2.34 bodies per house, 2.26 in Leon County, something like that. So we are growing, we need more houses, but look what this is showing. Okay, we are not building the housing that we need for our growing population. This is what's going to be the result, because multifamily, I suspect, is the cheapest way to build, right? So it worked so well in the Soviet Union, they became Russia. Here's something we looked at a couple years ago, because this got to be real scary here locally, but it also was very scary at the US level. Historically, the time it takes to build a house is 4 to 5 months. Maybe you see it jump up to 6 during times of the year, but you're looking at roughly 4 to 5 months to build a house. Well, after COVID, it jumped up to 7.5 months. And that caused a lot of the national news media who don't understand numbers to come out and say, we're overbuilding America. There are more homes in production than any time in the last 40 years. Like, of course, if you're taking twice as long to build them, you need twice as thick of a pipeline to be underbuilding at the same rate. And we were underbuilding, and we had all these news media saying, slow down the construction, we're building too fast. We're not building too fast. Months of supply is a great way to measure, and this is new construction months of supply. It's a great way to measure where your future supply and demand is going to be, because we measure the supply relative to the current rate of demand. And we're not at an all-time low, but the red circle on the right, that's the recent 2.5 years. We're real close to an all-time low, and what's coincidental about our current rate is every year, there's seasonality, right? We build some at certain times of the year and build slower other times of the year, but the slowest time of the year has been the highest peak we've hit in the last 3 years. Every one of those years would have been the lowest year on record for months of supply. Again, this is not Tallahassee, this is the US. Too few homes, new homes available, and the data supports it. Here's a graph I always show you because it kind of helps you check the health of the market, and it's a delinquencies. I didn't even update it. Delinquencies do not matter. When prices are going up at 10% a year, everyone can be foreclosed upon and walk away with money. Okay, there'd be a bidding war. Any one of you goes into foreclosure, your house goes on the market, you'll get enough money to pay off your mortgage, you'll get enough money to walk away, pay the attorney's fees for the bank. There's equity in the housing market. We went from about 2011 to 2016, there was no equity in the housing market. It's great for me, that's when all the lawsuits go away. Attorneys don't sue anybody in real estate when there's no equity. Okay, there's more equity in the housing market today than ever. The attorneys are back. Equity's back in the housing. What we don't care about, and I don't mean this at a personal level, I just mean at a macro level, we don't care about foreclosures. We don't care about short sales. They are not a factor in the market. This is the equity versus debt graph. Here we're looking at the entirety of the US, but treat it like a family. The blue is the average homeowner equity and basically the aggregate debt. And so you can see that equity's always just been barely above that debt. Barely, barely, barely. And then you hit the green part of the graph. That's when we went upside down from 2008 through 2014, 2015, in that time frame. We literally, as a country, owed more on our houses than they were worth. Made us bulletproof in court. You can't sue someone that has nothing. But now we're moving forward, and we've got equity, and we've got a lot of equity in the housing market. Why? Well, because we're not building enough homes. If you don't build the houses, every house is going to be worth more at a faster rate, and we're seeing equity explode. This is a graph. They were showing the 10 top counties in the U.S. for growth and the 10 top counties for losses on population. LA County lost 100,000 people last year. The policies the politicians have been enforcing in California are making that whole state fail. They're fleeing California. Nobody with wealth wants to stay in California, and they're running away. And same thing's happening from New York. Where they're running is, a lot is running to Florida. Florida's proven itself during COVID to be a good state for business, and a lot of them are running this way. And the question I have for this room is, what are we doing to pull in more than our fair share of the people that are escaping to Florida? Because most of them are going to Tampa and Miami and that region. There's opportunity to grow with people that are just fleeing communism out west. Median monthly home payment adjusted for wage inflation. Simply put, if we converted everything over the last 50 years to the dollar in like 1982 to 1984, we can then say, hey, our house payment's really going up because there's inflation. If you make more money, you can spend more money. And all the other cost of living things that are factored in, what I do is I try to keep an eye on where are monthly house payments now versus where they've been in the past, but let's put them on equal footing by adjusting them to inflation. And right today, we're $16 cheaper than the highest mortgage payment on record going back to 1987. So I graduated college in 1987. Today's mortgage payment's $16 more in 1982 dollars. What does that tell you? Home affordability is tanking. We weren't bragging about the housing market, I suspect, back in 1984. Those were bad times, high inflation. Well, welcome to today. Okay, rents are growing faster than core inflation. Core inflation includes rents. So if we pull out rents from core inflation and then compare rents to core inflation, rents are 46% higher than core inflation. What that means is when you hear on the news, oh, inflation's 3.5%, most of that is coming from rents, meaning your cost of living is going up fast. And maybe they're saying wages aren't quite there yet, or maybe goods and materials aren't quite there yet, but wages are there. Rents are there. People are paying more in rent today than they were at any time in the last 50 years when you factor in inflation. Rents rising faster than core inflation is part of our big problem. Mortgage rates, anyone think mortgage rates are too high? They're below the 53-year average. I got in the business in 91. I used to buy all my investment properties. I'd smile if it started with a 9. Anything under 10%, I was feeling good. Under 12%, I could make it work. And today we're whining about rates in the 6s. Okay, the rates are fine. Typically, when rates go up, it shocks the market for about 10, 11 months. But for the first time in history, rates more than doubled from 2021 to 2022, and it's hit the market very hard. But more impactful has been the no inventory. We take buyers out. They're like, how many homes do we have to see? None. We're just coming in here to see if you're ready to bid on the next one that hits the market. That's what it's like unless you're at the top end of the market. You've got to prepare people for speed.
But what about the cost of the home? Because 6% is not that crazy of a rate on $100,000.
Right.
But on $750.
It's relative, isn't it? Does $100,000 buy you the same today as it did 30 years ago? I'll give you a hint. Nope. Yeah, no, so yes, but that's why we adjust everything back with inflation, is because yes, we pay more for everything. Sticks, bricks, labor, all that is up high, but how does it compare with the past?
And is housing way up here compared to if everything is adjusted to here?
Yeah, housing is up above it. And so what that means is housing's always been more expensive than everything else, but now we're looking at a 4-fold increase of the difference. It's not a couple points higher. Now it's crazy higher. There's something on this graph that I think every one of you should internalize. This is something I have not seen spoken of at the national level anywhere. It's a real simple thought, but nobody's talking about it. Generally speaking, interest rates have fallen over the last 50 years. If you bought a house 50 years ago, 12 years later, you could refinance it at a lower rate. What that meant was you could pull equity out, keep your payment roughly the same, and now you've got a pile of money. Well, where does that money go? Well, it goes into the economy. Okay, so for the last 40 years, our economy has been bolstered by mom and pop refinancing their house and going and spending that money on a car or on stupid things like groceries and tuition for your kids, whatever. All this money for 40 years has propped up our economy. Well, if you study interest rates, there's a great book that shows 800 years of interest rates and the cycles that always seem to reemerge. We should probably anticipate the next 50 years of rising interest rates. That means for the next 40 or 50 years, we shouldn't expect mom and pop to support the economy by refinancing their home. Now their home's going to have the equity in it, they just aren't going to be able to afford to tap that equity. Okay, so we're going to see fewer moves. If anyone that wants to tap the equity, if they move down, they're going to move down into a higher payment. If they move up, they're going to maybe move up to a triple payment. I'm moving out of a house Tuesday, my interest rate's 3%. I promise you, my new house is going to be more expensive. It's crazy when you walk away from those interest rates. We're looking at that is what carried the economy since the 1980s. We don't get that anymore. I think our economy is probably in for a bigger tough landing than most of the national economists are talking about, because I don't think they've really done a proper due diligence on housing. So flipping over into Tallahassee, we're going to cover some of the similar things, but at a local level. This is a very busy looking graph, but what it allows me to do is allows me to put monthly supply on there, the monthly sales on there, and incidentally, all of my graphs for this are Leon County, just Leon County. So the blue bars are the months of supply. And you can see over here in 2009, months of supply were at 15. Today they're, right around 3. Now, there's an interesting nerd side of the industry. For the last 50, 60, 70 years, we've generally used 6 months of supply as a balanced market. If you have less than 6 months of supply, it's a seller's market, not enough inventory. If it's more than 6 months of supply, I said that backwards? No. Yeah, if it's more than 6 months of supply, it's a buyer's market, too many houses. So buyers have a lot to choose from. I personally believe we should change that 6 months of supply down to about 4 months of supply. And I believe that the difference between now and forever is forever there weren't computers, and forever there wasn't a digital world. And so today, back in the past, when I went to market a home, I had to go out with this thing called a camera, and it had film in it, and I'd take pictures, and then if I was really smooth, I'd pull the film out, run it over, and get it developed on a 24-hour cycle. But we had to get pictures developed. And then we had to come up with ad copy, and we had to turn the ad copy in. And if a publication came out once a month and you missed the date, it could be 60 days before your listing hit that piece of the market. Same thing with the newspaper. Same thing with the MLS. The MLS was every once a month. If you didn't get your listing before they printed the books, your listing wasn't in there. I believe there was a real 60-day time to get on the market in the past. Today, I can reach 95% of the buyers in less than 4 days. There is no time on the market. When realtors report time on the market, all they're reporting to you is they don't know what they're talking about. You just need, and that includes the president of the NAR. Okay, it's a statistic that is so easy and so available, and it means nothing. If you have a $400,000 house and you hire me to sell it, and I put it on the market at $800,000, is it going to sell? No. Does that time on the market count against it? No, because I can just relist it later at $400,000, sell it in 1 day, and then it's a one-day sale. Okay, so statistics that come from our MLS are highly corrupt, and you really have to understand it's not really a statistical database. That's not its purpose. Its purpose was a marketing database. Why am I going with all this? Well, we have near a historically low level of supply in Tallahassee. Our sales are down 35%, but if our supply was up, I think our sales would be down about 10%. Our sales are being hurt more by the limited supply than they are being hurt by the mortgage interest rate. The shock of the interest rates is over. We've been living with these rates for a year. Most people, statistic I know from measuring website traffic, the average person takes 11 and a half months to move. Subconsciously, they start looking at homes about 11 and a half months before they move. Okay? We know pretty much what they do at each stage of the cycle. And so if you think about it, if interest rates a year ago were roughly the same as they are today, then the person who was subconsciously looking at homes a year ago is roughly looking at similar houses today, although they're about 8% more expensive. Or they're actually 8% not as nice because they typically look at their top, what they can spend. Same graph, but just for high-end homes. And for the sake of conversation, we're just calling an $800,000 home a high-end home. That leaves us with about the top 1.5% of the market. I got to tell you, if you look back in 2016, 2017, I felt there was no way we would ever see our high-end market balance out in the next 10, 20 years.
If you want to see a video featuring my 9 tips for buying a home in a highly competitive market, you can view it by clicking on the box on the left side of your screen. To see a popular video featuring my top 6 home selling tips, just click on the box at the right. Please remember to like this video, check out the links below it, and subscribe to our channel so that you never miss anything.